Hey, it's great to see you again. A warm welcome back to Heroes Behind the Badge. We tell real stories about real cops. We expose the fake news about the police, and we give you the real truth. This podcast is brought to you by Citizens Behind the Badge, the leading voice of the American people in support of the men and women of law enforcement. For more information about how you can get involved and add your support to the men and women of law enforcement, citizensbehindthebadge.org. That's citizensbehindthebadge.org. I'm your host, Dennis Collins, a founding director of Citizens Behind the Badge and a law enforcement father. Please say hello to my colleagues today. First of all, William J. Erfurth. Well, actually better known to his friends and some of his enemies as Billy. How are you, sir?
Wow. How about that introduction? Pretty formal, D.
Well,
Hey,
yeah.
Another great show. Getting ready to rock and roll here. I want to reach out to everybody that's listening and remind everyone to please like, follow, and subscribe to our podcasts, because the more the times that each of you do that, the more people that will ultimately be notified about this podcast, which is just so important.
And don't forget, you'll be the first to know when a new episode releases. You'll be first. So please help us by subscribing and following and liking. By the way, Bill is a retired Miami-Dade police lieutenant, 26 years of decorated service. He is also a founding director of Citizens Behind the Badge. Now let's say hello to our fearless leader. Hey, Craig Floyd, how are you today?
As I'm feeling good today, and I've got my Artorias hat on. You may have noticed in prior podcasts, I tend not to wear a hat. Today, in honor of our special guest and in honor of a special police officer, a fallen law enforcement hero, Harold Vitale, who we're going to talk about in a moment, they built a memorial to him. Artorias is the statue in Saugus, Massachusetts, paying tribute to our fallen hero today. And I think many of us know King Arthur of the Renaissance era. He was revered as a protector of the people. And Artorias represents King Arthur's role as protector of the people. Harold Vitale was a protector of the people in Saugus, Massachusetts. And he is a fallen hero. We're going to tell you his story today.
And a great story it is. So we try to bring you the best. And I think today you won't be disappointed. So let me introduce our guest and his brother today. If you're a current member of law enforcement or been around law enforcement for any length of time at all, you know a few things for sure. Number one, we never forget. Heroes live forever. And we don't just focus on how they died, but we remember how they lived. And more importantly, we focus on their legacy. Today's hero, Harold Vitale, an Army veteran, 14 years of distinguished service with the Saugus Mass Police Department. His family remembers that Harold loved cars, he hated school, he liked pretty girls, and was devoted to his large, close-knit Italian family. And I am told he coined a phrase. Yes, he coined a phrase, Vitale Pride. His watch ended, sadly, June 18th of 1985. When we think of on-duty law enforcement deaths, we usually think of gunfire, gun battles. But that's not Harold's shocking story. Harold's story is about a fallen officer who just wanted to help people, a criminal justice system that failed him and his family, and a family that's devoted to honoring Harold's life and service. Today, we are delighted to have with us one of Harold's 5 brothers, Les Vitale. Les will tell us Harold's story, and we'll talk about, most importantly, his legacy. So, Les, I can't stop but ask, Vitale Pride. What did Harold mean by Vitale Pride?
Great question. It was pretty simple to, especially his younger brothers, to understand his early value system and his notion, his desire to make sure that you stood up for each other, you backed each other up. And as a younger brother, I didn't think too much about it other than he's an older brother and he would beat the crap out of me if I didn't. But, we learned how to back each other up. And as people maybe should know, as I was the youngest in the family. So I was a very young boy, young child. And, back in the days when you'd go to the schoolyard and you get pushed around, one lesson that I learned early on was either stand up for yourself or surround yourself with people that'll stand up with you and for you.
Good idea.
And that was Harold's idea of Vitale Pride. And that before it became popular, I think in sports, people talk about, the name on the, what's important is the most important thing you have is your name. People talk about the name on the front of your jersey, the name on the back of your jersey. And he was a firm believer that if you had that name and you lived in this family, your sole responsibility was to protect it. And I got that message loud and clear. And I, tried to live my life that way. And I think it resonated even more after he was killed. I understood even more how important that was.
That's great. I mean, and I think Vitale Pride lives on to this very day. Craig, I know Craig and Billy have some questions about that, and I'd like to throw it to Craig to start us off.
Well, let me just say that I've known Les and his brothers and the whole family now for, we date back to the 1988, I think was the first time we ever ran into each other. He helped us build the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial, and I became very close with the family, and I know their story. And that's why I was so anxious for our viewers, our listeners to hear this story, especially as we get closer to National Police Week in May. That's always the week that includes May 15th. And that's where we truly do honor the men and women in law enforcement, and we pay special tribute to those who died in the line of duty. No family that I know of, and I know many, has outdone the Vitale family in terms of remembering their fallen loved one. Harold was an incredible individual. I never met him myself, but I feel like I know him so well because I've heard the stories and I know the family. So today I want Les to help our listeners, our viewers, know the story of Harold Vitale. We've talked a little bit about his life, who he was, how he represented the family. He was a military person, Army veteran. And then from the Army, he went on to serve in law enforcement for 14 years with the Saugus Police Department. And Les, why don't we start with the story of June 18th, 1985. This your brother, your big brother, is on patrol, as he often was, and it was a fateful night. Tell us what happened on June 18th, 1985.
Sure. So first of all, I want to thank Craig for being such a family friend and the opportunity to be part of this and tell his story and share the heroes behind the badge. It's very important to my family and carry on this legacy and remind people of the danger of the job. But it's an awful story, but he had just come off vacation, reported for duty. He was always working the midnight shift because he moonlighted during the day as an auto mechanic. So he had come off his vacation, went back to work, checked in, went to the squad room, heard what was going on in the community, had their eyes and ears out for a few things, and went on duty. And within about an hour and a half's time, came upon a scenario where a call had gone over a police scanner that was in June, so it was just before 4th of July, and some kids were out up to no good, driving around in cars, blowing mailboxes off people's homes, of all things. So the department had the word out, on the lookout, middle of the night, and about 2:00, he saw a car roll through a stop sign. So he sort of recognized the car and decided to follow it a bit. It rolled through another one, and then he decided to put the lights on and pull the driver over. There were 4 occupants in the car, a driver and 3 friends. And when he put the call out, unbeknownst to him, the individual driving the car always drove around with a police scanner because he had incidents several times before that with the police. So he was listening to the broadcast that came over the airways from the dispatch and realized pretty quickly that my brother was going to have to approach him, and after he pulled him over, and he had an outstanding warrant. And he had been in another high-speed chase and altercation with the state police. He didn't appear in court, so the warrant had been issued. The dispatch told Harold that this is who it was, this is what he needed to do. And he reported, he went up to the vehicle, some back and forth, asked the fellow for the license and registration, got a little bit of an attitude, but eventually got the paperwork, went back. The processing went through, the discussion ensued. The driver of the car, 19-year-old individual, was listening to the whole thing. And according to the witnesses in the car who testified against their friend, he was so upset when he had heard that there was a warrant out for his arrest that Harold was going to come back and ask him to step out of the vehicle. He told his friends that, use vulgar language and F them, I'm going to kill those effing cops. And they begged him not to go. But Harold went back to the car, and the individual had rolled the window up a little bit. Harold had noticed it. Back in the day, 1985, the vehicles had little button door locks, and he had presence of mind to notice the door lock had been popped down. So he asked the fellow to step out of the car. Back and forth ensued. The fellow refused to do it. He said, "What did I do? I didn't do anything wrong." He said, "I'm going to ask you one last time." Step out of the car. And within a fraction of a second, a backup officer had shown up. And Harold said he had it covered, not to worry about it, sat in his cruiser. And within a few seconds, the next thing the backup saw was Harold had apparently reached in to pull the button, unlatched the door, and the fellow rolled the window up in his arm, and he drove off about 200 or 300 yards at high speeds. And the door was open because Harold got the door open successfully. And the fellow swerved the vehicle against a sign pole, and basically he killed him, instantly at that point. The occupants all fled the vehicle, including the driver. And the backup had pulled right up, called 911, called in for, backups to come, an ambulance, et cetera. And, it happened pretty quickly. And the next thing we know is that somebody from the department called my brother Dick, who was listed as the first person to call, one of my older brothers, and it was the police department. They told Dick that there had been a bad accident and that Harold was injured, and quickly asking a few questions, he found out that Harold actually was basically transported to the hospital, probably not going to make it, and the phone calls started to ring out through the rest of the family. My brother Dick was tasked with that responsibility to call each and every one of us at about 2:00 in the morning. And, I say this 40 years later, and as I say it, I still feel like it just happened. It's still surreal that would happen that fast under those circumstances. And, you sit back and you ask yourself, why? Was there anything that could have been done differently to reverse the course of action? But, that was it. He was left there. The fellow driving the car, and the occupants fled. That fellow fled, and he ran about 5 miles to a neighboring town to a friend's house, hid in his house and slept under his bed until the investigation ensued pretty quickly. They figured out through the other occupants in the car that they had captured where he might have gone, and they showed up the next day and they arrested the individual at his friend's house. And then,
Such a coward, I when I heard that story about him running to a friend's house, trying to escape what he had done to your brother, and then he hides under a bed. I mean, the lowest of the low. One thing that I remember about the story, and I don't think you hit on it, was that while he was driving with his officer hanging from the window, Harold's hanging from the window, and they're driving at a high rate of speed, the occupants of the car are screaming at the driver to stop. I mean, they had sense about them. And yet this driver obviously did not. I mean, it's just incredulous to me to think that, with all that happening, that he continued to drive at a high rate of speed, slamming Harold into a street sign. Unbelievable.
So, Les, I want to ask a more technical kind of cop-centric question. And I saw a picture of Harold in uniform. I saw that he was carrying a revolver on his right hip. So I am assuming that he's right-handed. Is that right?
Correct.
So did he, or had this come out in trial, when he reached into the vehicle, did he reach in with his right hand or his left hand?
So as best as we can tell, or were told when they did the accident scene investigation, he used his right hand on the outside door button and his left hand to get the button inside the car, because on those vehicles you had to push the plunger thumb button to pop it while lifting the lock. So it was two hands, right and left. And it did come out in trial because the defense attorney tried to use the theory that he was a young 19-year-old who was very afraid of his life, and this big burly officer with a white pearled handled gun, which was Harold's, favorite gun. He was intimidated by it. So, that's the stuff that happens. That's disgusting. That things get fabricated, they get blown out of proportion. But people of the jury are going to sit and listen and try to understand. Try to put themselves in different people's shoes. But our best, to our knowledge, how that came out was that he would have used his right hand to try to unlock from the outside and the left hand to pull up the little door button to get the lock disengaged. And so he couldn't have reached for his gun. And it was brought out later on that the holster was strapped, so it hadn't been unstrapped. But that came out, but that sort of didn't get us anywhere.
Yeah, and there was a reason I was asking that particular question, was because if it was his left arm that was pinned by the window, perhaps he would have had an opportunity to draw his gun. And the reason I'm talking about this is I had made a traffic stop as a young cop, and the guy was belligerent. I believe he was drunk. And I reached in with my left hand to put the car into park and turn the keys off, and he grabbed my arm and took off. And I pulled my gun out and I screwed it into his ear hole, basically. And we went maybe about 15 yards, and he thought twice about it. And that was the end of that story. And nobody got really hurt, but he went to jail. But interesting fact, and I'm sure this came out in court, or, training has changed over the years, but they drilled that into us in the police academy, that you always keep your right hand free, or your gun hand, like I'm right-handed, so your gun hand free. And when we were in the academy, if you were ever caught carrying your books or your backpack or whatever it was during classes or whatnot in your strong hand, in your gun hand, you had to do push-ups. And to this very day now, years after working and being retired, if I'm carrying my gym bag, if I'm going anywhere, I still always carry that in my left hand to keep my strong hand free. So just a kind of an interesting thing, and that's why I had asked that question.
Yeah, what was interesting about that, Bill, is that we also learned that he was successful getting the door disengaged, the door opened. So when the window was rolled up, the vehicle immediately he fled, and he was starting and stopping. So the door was swinging open. It wouldn't close all the way, but Harold was trying to brace himself by putting he yelled at him from what we were told, that he yelled at him to stop the car. My arm is stuck. And he tried to put his his feet into the ground to pull his arm out. When he did it, he broke both of his legs.
Oh, yeah.
So at that point, he's now got two broken legs, and the door is opening and closing, and this kid ain't stopping. So he drove it, about 1,000 yards, got up to a high rate of speed, and somehow decided, with the presence of mind, with the door swinging open, he would cockeye the car. So he did a sharp right turn. He's on the driver's side door, sharp right turn into a signpost, And when that happened, the door snapped with my brother on it, right straight against the post, it's his whole body. So, it's, not one of those things, not being there, you wish you could be, and you try to reverse the course of action, but you wish those kids in the car could have somehow won the argument. You wish the kid would have understood that nothing good is going to come of this. And at the end of the day, you're going to go to court, you're going to go to trial. So you got another ticket, and, you didn't kill somebody. At the end of the day, he was brought up and indicted on a first-degree murder charge, which is a whole nother story, because of the premeditated nature of it. Scanner in the car, told his friends he was going to flee. I have a warrant. They're not going to get me again. I'm going to kill that effing cop. And, back and forth it went. Harold come back to the car, and that kid didn't wait very long at all. And it happened, bang, bang. And Charlie Carroll, the backup cop, who God knows what he thinks to this day, how he overcame that. But the next thing you know, he's sitting there told that Harold's I got it. You're good. Stay right there. And the next thing he sees this car take off. Then he jumps back in his cruiser 1,000 yards, and he's left to pick up the pieces of my brother on the street, and then call in. And it's somehow the presence of mind to call in what had happened, and then all hell broke loose.
What we've just talked about is obviously the horrible part of the story. There's obviously a very inspirational part of the story that I really want to get into, but let's finish up with the trial. I am just to this day just so upset by the fact that he was brought up on first-degree murder charges, should have spent the rest of his life in jail, as far as I'm concerned, and many others. I know the family feels that way. But he served less than 10 years in prison, got out at the age of 29. How did that happen? Why wasn't he convicted of first-degree murder, and how did he get out in 10 years?
He had a great defense attorney. He got lucky. I think the jury that he got had a melting pot of people that somehow, I think, commiserated with a young teenage person who they bought into the hype and the scare factor. But what blew our mind is that the occupants of the car all testified. They all agreed, and they all testified of the discussion in the vehicle, the incidents before Harold walked up to the vehicle, after he went back to the cruiser, the police scanner radio broadcast, what they heard, and they all elaborated on what his nickname was Pepper, the kid who drove the car, what Pepper had said he was going to do. And they begged him to not do it. So we sat there scratching our head during the trial, and obviously the defense attorney did a great job trying to paint a different picture of that it all happened because this young boy was afraid. So first-degree murder charge is the charge. He gets indicted very easily, and we go to trial, and then the district attorney's office tells us what's likely going to happen. What's the defense attorney going to try to argue? He's trying to get this dropped down to maybe a manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, et cetera, et cetera. And we're like, well, how could that be? And then lo and behold, it gets presented, and they're ready to read the charge to the jury. They're ready to, all the testimonies happened. We think we're winning. It's largely in favor of Harold. And then the jurors come out a couple of times and asked a couple of questions to clarify some things. But the biggest incident, the biggest error that happened was when the judge said he was going to release them to the chambers, he wanted to read the charges. So he read the charges of what he was charged with and what the different sentencing guidelines are, what the consequences are. So he led with the manslaughter charges and never read the first-degree murder charge. Never read it.
Or oversight?
Total oversight. He let the jurors go. They went into chambers, and Bob Weiner, the DA, went nuts. Pulled the judge aside, called for sidebar, and he got ornery with the prosecutor, and he said, what's the problem? He said, what's the problem? He said, get the stenographer over here and read back the charges you read. he's been tried. We've been trying him all week on a first-degree murder charge. You never read the charge. So he brought them back out, and it was like, oh, by the way, there's one more charge I have to tell you about, and that's first-degree murder. Back to the room they went, and they came out, and he was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. And one other crazy, the things come back to me as I'm talking this out loud now. The foreman of the jury was a young kid, big guy. He kept asking questions, and the judge kept telling him he needed to be careful asking questions to not taint things, etc. When the trial ended, we were out in the street. We were all devastated. That foreman of the jury came out screaming at the other jurors and called them all losers and told me he never wanted to see them again in their lives. And he came over to my family and he said, I just want you to know, the only alternative I had here was to cave into their demands. Otherwise, you would have had ended up with a hung jury. And I couldn't see your family go through that based upon everything I saw. This is the most egregious thing. He's a murderer, and he should have been convicted of murder. So the news media were out there writing things down, and, the whole circus ensued. And then, so he has his manslaughter charge. They take him away, and then obviously the appeal process begins. And, a couple of years later, we find ourselves back in court for the appeals. And some of the appeals he wins, some that he loses, and he ends up getting retried a second time. So we had to do the trial all over again. But what I didn't know about the law back then was that he couldn't be tried on first-degree murder charge. He could only be retried on the manslaughter charge that was awarded as to whether or not that was valid. He could have won that, and then he would have gone scot-free. So we walked away from those two trials just shaking our heads saying, how does the best justice system in the world, but, we know otherwise, and, that's not justice.
So Les, your brother's killer was 19, did 10 years. Is he still alive today? Do you know anything about him, what he's doing, what's happening?
From what we know, he's alive today. I don't know if he's still living in the town, but when he did get out, he had gone back home and lived in the town for a bit. And it's just, we lost touch with it a little bit, and probably better off, because the anger would just continue to boil up. And the guys that my brother worked with in the department were obviously very upset. And what we started to think about or worry about, being a tight-knit family, but not thinking we're above the law, the last thing we wanted was one of his coworkers to do the wrong thing. But people would say, oh, you must want to put a contract on this kid. Oh, the cops will kill him. And I'm like, you know what? Well, I don't think we're not going to win anything if that happens. So, it's just he got lucky.
What I remember, Les, is that either at the trial or right after the trial was over, the father of the killer, this teen killer, and you can understand maybe why he turned out the way he did and why he did what he did when you hear his father. As I recall, and I'll paraphrase, he said something to the effect of, my son was sick and tired of these police always harassing him and giving him a hard time. Didn't he say something to that effect? I mean, this is the guy's father.
He did. He stood up right at the end, after everybody was, ready to release everybody, and the judge was still there. And he was obviously pretty upset because his son had now been found guilty of something. We felt we lost. And he turned around, and my whole family's sitting there, all my other brothers and my sisters, and we're like, I can't believe this guy got up, and he turns around and he pointed at us as he said it out loud. He looked at the judge. He said, my son was sick and tired of being harassed and arrested by the police all the time. You people are no good. My brother Dick almost went over the rail at him. And we had to restrain a couple of us, and we had plenty of the Saugus police in the courtroom helping us out. So, we got order in the court relatively quickly, but it spilled over into the outside on the sidewalk a little bit. But then we just realized we better diffuse this and just go off on our own. And we had a meeting with the prosecutor and talked about what are the next steps, immediately figuring appeals court and then probably a new trial. And that was exhausting. That was emotionally draining. We can't believe we're going to have to do this when my brother is the one who's dead. And this is the kid who killed him and said he was going to. So that's what we knew.
Hard to understand, but when you hear the father of this killer talk the way he did, you may be a little easier to understand why he grew up to be the kind of person he was. Evil.
You've been listening to part one of our conversation with Les Vitale, brother of fallen officer Harold Vitale. We've heard the heartbreaking story of that fateful night in June 1985 when Harold's life was tragically cut short at a routine traffic stop, and the frustrating legal battle that followed as the family sought justice. But this story doesn't end with tragedy. In part two, we'll discover how the Vitale family transformed their grief into purpose, creating an incredible legacy that continues to support law enforcement families across the nation. Les will share the profound experience that changed their perspective at National Police Week in Washington, D.C., and how it inspired them to establish a foundation that has raised over $1 million to honor fallen officers and their families. Join us next time for part two of our conversation with Les Vitale as we explore what it truly means to live with Vitale Pride. This is Heroes Behind the Badge, brought to you by Citizens Behind the Badge. Remember to subscribe, like, and follow so you don't miss the powerful conclusion to this remarkable story.